Hey everyone, this is Dr. Russ Jones.
And Brad Kennan here.
We are wide open. How are you, my friend?
Great. Excellent.
Wow. Me too. Feeling like a champion today.
I was just wait for that. So I'm just
well, I have to tell you, it's warming up. I was in Ohio this weekend. The weather sucked. It was not good to be out. It was a crappy weekend, but tomorrow it's going to be sunny, upper 70s, and it's my birthday. So go see patients in the morning and spend a little time in the woods. Thank you.
What are you, 39?
Yes.
Yeah. 39 again. All
yes.
Right. What is it, NMN or MNN or NMN? Is that what it is?
NMN, 1,000 grams a day.
Yep,
that's 1,000 milligrams. Let's not do 1,000 grams, people.
No.
Yeah,
snort it all day long.
Yeah,
but that will turn back the time of aging.
Yeah, that's we have Humerman and Peter Attia and some other gentlemen that are kind of convolutedly pushing that right now among the other 50 vitamins I take. It supposedly is making some of the people that don't work out, your body kind of responds like you did. I don't know if that's a physiological thing. I mean, I can't imagine people are developing muscles that aren't working out.
Yeah, I don't believe that. There's no.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah,
I don't believe that.
How many vitamins you taking?
I take about 7.
7. That seems a reasonable number.
7.
You know what I mean? It's a lot more than most people, and it seems reasonable to me.
It is not 42.
Yeah. Are you doing anything new for your health lately?
No.
Okay.
Pickleball.
Yeah. Okay. So you told me you're playing pickleball. You're playing.
That caused me try to play some basketball, pickleball, go to the gym. It's just eat somewhat healthy, 2 meals a day, try to avoid 3 meals a day at all costs. Protein, lots of protein. By the time you get a protein shake in the morning, then, I always take one of those 42 gram of protein. Not a muscle milk, but the other one that actually tastes good.
I know Sam's has it. I have them in my fridge too.
Yeah, I do too.
That's made by Fairlawn, but it's called something else.
Fairlife,
but it's something else.
Fairlife. Yeah, it's Fairlife Core. 42
that's
grams.
Right.
So by the time I take probably 30 grams of protein, then a Fairlife, and then I go to the gym, and then if I come home and have some eggs and some sausage all mixed up with some hot sauce on it, every egg is 7 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So then you have, chicken or steak or something for dinner. So that's all I'm good for.
Yeah. I mean, your life has really changed a lot in the last, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years, 10 years. I don't know how long. How long have you been really changing?
I don't know. Probably after Ben died. So, I don't know, probably 5
years.
Yeah.
All right.
That was what I told my wife. That was the only thing I really ever regretted in my life is not getting into this before he passed away, because he did it religiously. He went to the gym.
He was a monster.
Yeah, he was a monster.
He was in the top 1%.
Yeah, I didn't understand his mindset. And I got to go to the gym every day. He gets up in the morning, goes to the gym, works out, eats all this food. And he's just eating protein and tons of it. And, sometimes in the afternoon, like late, it'd be 5 o'clock. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm headed to the gym. I'm like, you really went to the gym today? He's like, yeah, but I'm going to go again. I never understood that at all until I started going. And then for a little while, you're kind of, you're going down a path that maybe you don't understand. So then you start getting better. And then you have a routine and you have this path. So you're on the path now, and I've been going for years, like, like you always tell me. And
it's a habit.
If you try to get off that path, it's like, man, I know it's like, was Sunday. I think it was Sunday. Yeah. I'm like, man, I'm feeling kind of sore today. I'm going to play pickleball later. I can't go to the gym. I my muscles need a break. And I'm thinking, man, it's like 9 o'clock. I'm like, man, I could probably go to the gym for like an hour. I'd be okay, wouldn't it? And then I just have to say, no, I'm not going to the gym. I'm not doing any of that stuff today. I got to rest.
Was it encouraging when, I mean, people don't know you, but you're a tall man, you're a large man, and
Yeah.
now, I mean, you have good shoulders, you have a bicep, your chest is showing. I mean,
Yeah.
surely, isn't that encouraging when you look out and you think
It is. It
changing?
absolutely is.
So even though we're at an age where, it's kind of hard to hold it, let alone grow it.
Right. And that is encouraging, because I think to myself, how many years did I miss if I would have done this 20 years ago?
Yeah.
If I would have done this when I was 35 instead of, or, 32 instead of 52, or started when I was 40, 37 instead of 47 doing this,
Right.
it would have been a big difference. And I wish I would have done that too. So, but no,
I bet
I
you
just
that
wish
there's
that
a
was
lot of
one.
people that you're encouraging you don't even know, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'd be
I
nice.
don't know. I bet you, the guys at work, even though they're younger, and I bet you're surprised. And I know when I'm at the gym, when I see somebody that's around my age or older, like I watch them and I look at them, and because I know how hard it is, to have muscles when you get to a certain age. And so a lot of times I'll stop them and say, "Hey, you encourage me, just by how hard you're working." And
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I think of that too. It's like, if that guy can do it,
yeah,
I can do it too.
exactly.
Anyway, on to the show. We have a guest with us tonight.
Oh, okay. We want to talk about something other than
Yeah,
fitness or health.
right, exactly. Which we could probably go ahead on that
Sure.
for the rest of the show. But
Yeah.
anyway, we have a gentleman from, I don't know if it's quite your neck of the woods, but we're just going to call West Virginia your neck of the woods.
Okay.
So in his words, I do believe he said it's a town small enough that if you're driving somewhat fast and you blink, you will miss it. From Ida May, West Virginia, is Les Odell.
Hey, Les, how are you,
welcome
buddy?
to the show.
How you guys doing? Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Man, it's good to see somebody else from West Virginia. Brad and I've had some witnesses on from West Virginia, but we have not. There's not very many guys that are researching Bigfoot in West Virginia. Probably like, I don't know what, maybe 3 or 4 of us or something like that.
There's just a handful. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to meet you, man. I'm so glad that you're here. For the listeners, Les and I have talked off and on over the years. Usually something will happen and we'll reach out, but he lives up around Morgantown, which is a couple hours from me. And so, since I swore off my speaking things, we have just not bumped into each other.
Right.
So hopefully that'll happen soon.
Right. And so I do feel, Russ, that you are ganging up on me. So you got two West Virginians against me.
Yeah.
And then 3 or 4 shows ago, we had a lady that went to high school with Russ on the show, and they didn't even know it.
We didn't even know each other when we found that out.
Right. So he went to high school with her, literally was in high school with this person, came on the show, and it turns out they were at the high school at the same time, and she was fawning over him because he played third base on the baseball team, and she was the official baseball yearbook photographer. So anyway.
Well, I didn't know about fawning and all that.
Well, I made that part up, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I just made that up. I'm trying to make you feel good, Russ. Come on. So anyway, Les, we know you got to, you have a book out.
Yes, sir.
On the subject of Bigfoot. We know that you take reports.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on your age, most of us saw In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, when we're in our 40s and 50s, if that's kind of where we started.
Yeah.
How did you get interested in the subject?
Well, I'm 50.
Okay.
But
you don't look it.
Yeah.
You're aging gracefully.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm 50. But no, my interest in it didn't start in that way. I mean, I knew about the Paris Gimlin film. I've watched In Search Of and stuff like that back in the day. But I was more into the paranormal side of things, because of something I had happened when I was a kid. And so I got into the whole paranormal ghost stories, and I just enjoyed that a lot. So later on in life, I started to do investigating as far as that's concerned. Well, more of just talking to people first and collecting stories and hearing folklore. And then eventually it got to the point where my son and I, started talking quite a bit about it. And he told me one time, he said, "Dad, I'd love to go ghost hunting." And I was like, okay. So I went out, bought a couple of recorders, and we walk around, do things at graveyards and stuff like that. And well, that kind of spread, and people started to ask me to check things out and talk to them about it. And then he and I were having a discussion one day after we kind of, like, the little group we had kind of disbanded. He's like, "I've been listening to podcasts and stuff about Bigfoot." I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." He said, "What's your thoughts on it?" I said, "Well, I mean, I know the Patterson-Gimlin film, and it's always been in the back of my head. And even the little town I grew up, there was a local history or local lore about something I guess you would consider Bigfoot, but they called it the Granttown Goon. It was a hairy thing that lived near the coal fields, and so I've had interest in it. So with that, we decided to start a Facebook page called West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters. And I did that to give people in West Virginia a place to come share their stories, whether it was ghosts, aliens, anything strange, Bigfoot, anything they wanted to. And I would talk to several people, whether it was through email, phone calls, or messenger. I just started talking to a lot of people. And then as the channel grew, or as the page grew, I started getting reports of Bigfoot. People would send me that, hey, I saw this, and this is where this had my experience. And it kind of slowly, I guess, morphed into more of a Bigfoot page, I guess, or for lack of better words. And so I started talking to people about it more, and then they would call me and say, "Hey, would you mind coming out?" I would go out and check, around their property, or I'd check where they had their locate or their sightings. That's how I got into it. And basically, I'm still, as far as research or investigating Bigfoot, I'm still green. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm still learning every day, watching guys like you and you all, and listening to other podcasts and reading reports, from other organizations, and I'm learning every day. But that's basically in a nutshell how I got into it.
Well, I believe all of us are learning every day because we don't know anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As soon as somebody thinks they got it figured out, they don't, and they're, you get a situation where somebody's like, "Hey man, I got these things around my house." You go out there and you try to get evidence, and it's hard. It's very, very hard to get evidence, true. There's a lot of, thank goodness with Darby Orcutt, right? That's our North Carolina guy, with some of the skin cells on some handprints and maybe some blood that they've seen. We could get something better, but we don't know anything either. I mean, who knows? So,
well, I mean, what I technically was meaning about learning as not necessarily learning, the whole aspects, all the aspects of Bigfoot, but learning different ways to search, different ways to investigate, or coming up with my own ways to figure things out. That kind of stuff,
Sure.
So I'm still learning in that regards.
Well, I think we all are. So you, obviously, if people started contacting you about these things and cryptids and different stuff,
right?
What's the oddest thing or the best Bigfoot thing that someone has come to you and you just said, "You know what? That's freaking amazing." Do you have anything just like, "Wow, man, that's just kind of blows your hair back"?
Probably one of the most compelling stories or accounts accounts, whatever you want to call it, I've ever taken.
Sure.
Actually came from Nicholas County. It was in 2018. It was I think it was a little town called Drennan, if I'm not mistaken, right outside Summersville. And this gentleman calls me. He finds me online, and he asks if he can call me, and he calls me, and he's told me, he's like, "I'm 63 years old. I've lived in West Virginia all my life." He said, "I've hunted the woods all my life." He said, "You're all around mountain man." He said, "I've been out, all my life I've been doing this." He said, "You could never have told me that Bigfoot existed in anywhere in the world, let alone West Virginia." He said, "You could never convince me of that." He said, "Until that day." He said, "Now you can't convince me that it doesn't." So I went on to talk to him, and and he asked me if I'd come down to, locate, or I asked him, I said, after he started telling me a few things, I asked if I could come to the location. He said that he would meet me there, him and his wife both. And the only reason that I went to the location is because they kept telling me one thing that just stuck with me and I thought was odd. And they kept telling me every time I'd ask them, give me a description, which I would bring it around about every so often to see what I could, for lack of better words, to see if I could trip them up, with their description or the story in any way. They always told me, each time I asked them, they would tell me, we don't remember seeing the feet on this animal. Every time I'd ask them, describe what the creature looked like, the proportions and all this thing. And they always kept saying, we don't remember seeing the feet. And I thought that was the oddest thing for somebody to say. So I went and met them. And like I said, there was a gentleman and his wife. They took and showed me where they were at, where this supposed creature had come, where it was started coming toward the road. And they were coming down around, there's a little 2-lane road. I think it's Route 39, if I'm not mistaken. And they're coming down around a turn, like a long sweeping left-hand turn. And they see what he thought was a bear at first coming across this gravel lot. Let me set up a little bit. There's a guardrail, and then it goes into a gravel lot. It's your typical pull off here in West Virginia. And there was a tree line, and there was a creek behind that tree line. And he said this thing comes out on the gravel lot. He's thinking it's a bear. He starts to slow down. As he gets closer, it comes out in the middle of the road, stands in the middle, it gets in the middle of their lane and stands up and turns towards them.
Wow.
He stops the car, and he immediately knows, or to him right then, he's like, this is not a bear. He said, I'm looking at it. It's got a face like certain, primate looking, and it's all covered in hair. But he said this hair on its chest was thinner. It wasn't thick. He said you could see the pectoral muscles and stuff. The hair did look wet. He said it was like shiny and wet, almost like when a dog gets wet. He said the hair kind of curls a little tiny bit. So he thought it came from like the creek on the other side of the gravel pile or the gravel lot.
Is this a daytime sighting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. It was during the day. Well, actually, it was in the evening, but still daylight.
Okay.
And he sees that it's wet, and they're staring at it, and then it eventually turns, walks the rest of the way across the road, across the ditch, and there's a hillside on the other side of the road. He said it gets on all fours and goes up the hill and goes up over this rock like ledge. So as I'm talking to him, when I decided to interview him there, I separated him and his wife. I talked to her first, and I asked her, I said, do you mind sketching, what you saw or seen? And she said, absolutely. And as she's doing that, I took him, and my son was with me. I took him and my son, we walked and just had a discussion. And in my investigating pack, I guess you'd call it, I carry these little 4x4 pictures of CGI renderings, or whatever you want to call them, artist renderings of faces that people are supposedly seen. So I carry like 20 or 22 or something like that. I carry those. And
that's a good idea.
What I do with them is I kind of use them like as a police line sketch or police lineup.
Sure.
And I'll put them out and have them, the witness either pick a face that looks like what they saw, or pick different features from the faces to kind of give me a mental vision,
Sure.
of what they've seen. So he chose one picture, and like I said, I had her draw that, and I don't know, I got it marked here in the book, but I know it's kind of hard to see on camera here, but that's the picture that she drew right there. I don't know if you can see it all.
Just the outline, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of hard, but that's the
see.
That's the pic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the picture he chose. And if you look at the original picture, the face on her drawing in that picture that he chose looked real similar. But she also, in her drawing, now again, I don't know if you can see on there, she didn't draw any feet. She stopped right below the knees and the shin area.
Okay.
And I still thought that was really interesting.
Okay.
So after we're talking to him for a little bit, I told him, I said, do you mind taking my son and standing my son along the road, not in the road, but along the road where this thing was,
Sure.
this thing was at. And he did. And I said, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to back my car up and I'm going to come down through here. You stop me where you're saying you were at. And he did. And the
Okay.
first thing I did is took my phone, I hold it eye level, and I take a picture. I get out of the car and I say, I want you to see something. And he looked at the picture, and you can see his face kind of, he realizes what he's looking at. I said, what do you notice? He says, you don't see his feet. You can't see my son's feet from about mid shin down, or his legs from about mid shin down. So that kind of tells me, they were pretty close. If that's an aspect of the story that they're really believing.
Gotcha. So they couldn't
close.
see the feet because maybe the hood of the car or something.
Because of the hood of the car.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they were within so many feet from the front of the car and so many feet from the windshield.
Wow.
So that's one of the ones I was like, like I said, really compelling to me.
Don't you think it's weird how in some cases, Bigfoot will seemingly, what was that story, Brad? It was out in Oregon. It was on Highway 9 or something, and like 9 different people called the 911 that Bigfoot was running.
That was the road. They were going to a tunnel or something. It was a tunnel outside of Oregon, I do believe.
Yeah, and then you'll have other cases where, I mean, they're so slick and so punchy that they won't do anything. And then every now and then, I've taken several reports here in West Virginia where they just literally, walk out in the road in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
I need to encounter one of those that don't care about people, that will just kind of walk at you.
Didn't we decide those are the ones that lost a bet?
Well, there is people that wonder if it's not
like a juvenile rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kind of, makes sense. Why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, who's to say, right?
No. Yeah. We don't know.
No, we have no idea. I mean, I think that's what, like when you think about tracks, I told you I usually find tracks maybe 3 times a year or something like that. And in Appalachia, I think that's pretty good. But you'll see tracks that they will just walk, seemingly, and leave a bunch of them. Now, they're usually not in West Virginia, usually not in Ohio or someplace like that. But it's so funny in Appalachia, when you post a picture, it's usually one track, and there's always one person on Twitter or someplace they'll say, there was only one track, that's suspect, but a lot of places in Appalachia, I mean, you're just lucky to find a track, let alone, a number of them. But I don't know. I mean, maybe they're like people, and some of us will walk in the open and some of us will be walking along the edge of the woods, who knows?
Yeah. So obviously you have what's your book called, Les?
Old Man of the Mountain.
Right. So is this covered just Bigfoot, or is it some more cryptids, or?
No, this is basically all it is stories that I've either collected or interviews I've done and things like that. Like I've told people, it's not literally a literal masterpiece, because I'm not a great writer, and a lot of the stories are in the people that told me the story. It's in their voice, and it may it's not grammatically correct, but it's accounts.
So,
is there anything that you've noticed after you've taken these accounts that you thought, I should watch this closer, or I should consider that, or maybe I should be looking at, maybe it's ridges more, I should be looking at creeks more? Or is there anything that occurred to you after, interviewing the witnesses?
Definitely waterways somewhere, walking creeks. I'll do that a lot because that's, I don't know, I use it not only just for that. I also use it as when I'm hiking, I use waterways to, keep my bearings. I don't really use a compass or anything. I just stay with the waterway or something like that. So I definitely, waterways is one of the things I look at. I look at the food sources that's in the area. Like right now, I got cameras out in an area that's had a couple reports, and people were like, "Yeah, you never catch evidence on there." Well, I'm not necessarily looking for Bigfoot evidence on my cameras. I'm actually looking to see what kind of other animals are in that area. Whether what
There
kind
you
of
go,
food source
smart
could be
boy.
there. Yeah.
Right.
I had to ask you. I don't want to get too far off track, but you said that you'd had something. We were talking in the beginning. You said that you initially believed in paranormal, and it was because you had something happen as a child.
Right.
What was it that happened as a child?
I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I don't know why when I was younger, but we moved around. My dad was a Vietnam veteran, and I don't know why, if it had anything to do with that and things he had went through, but we seemed to move a lot, and we would move to different home or different places. And Dad always just said, it's just, gypsy blood is what he always called it. And he just didn't like to stay in a place a long time. So for the first, probably until I was like sixth, 7th grade, we moved like almost every year. So when I was like 7 or 8, we moved into this. He found this old farmhouse, and he wanted to move there, and it had, some property that we can roam, and there was a big barn, and there was a big chicken coop, and there was a tractor barn, and there was an outhouse. I'm only 50, but I grew up in a house where I used an outhouse. Wow. But we moved into that home, and from the time we moved in there, I had the weirdest feeling. Just, I don't know. It could have been, if what happened didn't happen, you could just pass it off as a kid's, imagination, I guess. But I always had the weirdest feeling in that house, and even the feeling where I felt like something was going to grab me from a dark room and just drag me into this. Are you there?
Yeah, go ahead. Your
Yeah.
Wi-Fi just paused for a second. Something you were worried that something was going to drag you.
Yeah.
Into that dark
it's
room.
just I had a feeling like something was just going to grab me. But it got to the point where, we was there for a little while, and the room that my brother and I shared was off my mom and dad's room, and it had the old push button. It wasn't a flip switch. You had these little push buttons.
Mm-hmm.
You there again?
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. Okay. And it pushed the button, and when you push the button, it had a little delay for some reason, and the contact.
You back?
You there?
Yeah,
Yep.
go ahead.
I'm here.
You push the button, and it had the little contact. You hear us, Les? You hear us? Hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I don't know what's going on. It keeps flicking off. But I would run to my bed, jump into my bed, and we shared bunk beds, and I was on the bottom. I slept on the bottom bunk, and there were nights that I remember going to bed, and I remember looking across the room, and I would see these shadows that looked like 3 to 4 foot tall shadows going across the room on the wall, directly across from me.
You need to move.
And I remember seeing them, and I would cover my head up, and I couldn't. I mean, I don't know why, but I was so terrified. I tried to scream for my dad. I couldn't even scream for my dad. So I'd cover my head up. I'd either fall asleep, or when I'd look, there wouldn't be any shadows there again. This happened a few times. Well, then there was one time I started seeing them. I could see them moving, and I noticed in the corner, diagonally from where, like if I was in this corner with our bed, diagonally over by the door, and there's another corner, I seen this tall, human-shaped shadow standing in the corner. The other ones were just like blob shadows, like things. And this thing, to me, because we had 10-foot ceilings, to me, it had to be like 7 foot tall, standing in the corner. That's what my recollection of it is. Probably about 7 feet tall. And I remember seeing this thing, and it was like it was watching the other shadows move, and it never looked my way. I'd just cover my head up and hide. Well, this happened a few times, and I remember two very vividly. And then on the third time that I remember happening, as I'm watching these other shadows, as it starts, then I see the thing in the corner again. And this time, instead of just covering my head up, I actually sat up in my bed and I like scooched back into the corner, like where the headboard and post was in the corner. And when I did, this thing turned and looked at me.
Oh, well, that's not cool.
And within a split second, just like instantly, it went from looking at me to across the room, underneath the top bunk, and was within 8 to 10 inches from my face, like
Oh my
right here.
gosh.
And I could see the head. It didn't have any facial features.
Okay.
I never seen any facial features at all, ever. It had a head. I could see the head, the neck, the shoulders. I could see let me back up. Even standing in the corner, I could see all that. You could see the arms. You could see the gap between the arms and the side, but you couldn't see like leg definition. It was more solid, But when it come under the bed, it was right up in my face. I could see all the shoulders and stuff. There was no red eyes that you hear people talking about on What Shadow People. There was no facial definition. It was all black, but it wasn't like some people describe as like a cutout, like a shadow, like just solid black, like, darker and dark, which it was dark, but the black inside that shape moved almost like it was like really dark black smoke rolling around. I remember seeing that movement, and I don't know how long it was there. To me, it felt like forever. And then eventually it kind of moved back, stood up, and turned to its left. And for, I guess, lack of better words, floated, glided, because I couldn't see legs, through my mom and dad's door into their room. And I watched it turn to the left, in their room, and it was gone. And I never did see it again. And we weren't there too much long after that. And we moved. And
maybe you're that salt too.
Well, years later, it come to my attention, with that my dad was experiencing quite a bit of stuff that possibly was paranormal, and which he later called it the Odell curse, I guess you say. Mm-hmm. And I think this might have been part of it, and that's why we moved a good bit. And he was seeing these things too, because there was several years later, I wrote that story out and I sent it to somebody. I don't know if you all know who Dave Strader is, that used to do a paranormal podcast, but I wrote and sent it to him, and he read it on his podcast, and I didn't give any details of where it was at. And I let my dad listen to it, and I said, "You know where that was?" He said that was on Michael's Hill. So he never told me he had an experience there, but he knew where that happened, and I never told him about it. I didn't tell too many people about it until after I, wrote it to that podcast.
We were talking about, I don't remember how many episodes ago it was, Brad, about whether or not there was a potential that land was cursed, or land, something had happened on a particular piece of land or whatever. But I guess one of the things that we didn't talk about was, are certain things attached to humans as well? You know what I mean? So it's just not a piece of land that is cursed or whatever, but, here's your father, maybe he's seeing some things. So his answer, even though it might have been him seeing things, or it was attached to him or attracted to him, and he would just kind of move every time, hoping that there's another bad house. But every time you get to a new house, the thing that's in common is you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Scientology, but let's not go down that path. I think don't they believe like you have these little thetas or something attached to you and blah blah blah. I don't know. They make you evil, or I don't know. I think I have to go watch that South Park again.
I remember I read a book by Chuck Swindoll. This is a long time ago. You remember, maybe in the 70s, he was like a famous TV preacher, and he wrote this book. I can't even think of the name of it, but he showed pictures of, not pictures, but, his story told of people walking around in town, and people would be able to look at that person and have all these, for lack of terms, demons attached to them. Some were big, some were small. One might be gambling, and one's pornography or stealing or sex or whatever it happened to be.
Right.
And that's how he envisioned it. So when Les was saying those things, it was kind of made me think of, something along those lines. That's just that guy's interpretation, though.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, who knows, man? Our ancestors may have done something at some point to tick somebody off, and next thing you know, this is a life we live. I think don't like the Hindus believe that or something, or
Well, the Bible talks about that, there being generational curses and
right.
That type of thing.
All right. Well, that's off subject. So
Yeah.
Russ, when you said let's
Sorry,
not
man.
get off subject, let's not get off subject.
Listen, I was ready to quit when he was talking about like something's darkened in the corner. I'm like ready to bail.
like you don't like dogmen, you don't like people,
No.
dark figures in your room.
No.
I mean, come on, man.
No, I have seen a ghost myself. I remember I grew up in a house in Fairfield County, Ohio, south of Columbus, an old farmhouse from the 1865 or 1869, if I remember right. And it had one of those windy staircases that you could barely fit upstairs. It was really sharp. And when you got up there was a closet straight ahead. And one end of the house was my sister's bedroom and one end was mine. And I think we were I was 6 and she was 4 or something along those lines. And my parents came running upstairs. It was the middle of the night, around 3 a.m. And my sister and I had both screamed at the same time. We had both seen this figure. I remember it being a gray, hazy figure that wasn't touching the floor, that was standing in the center, and then it moved into the closet. And later, apparently the man that had lived there had committed suicide. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it or who knows, but that was my one and only ghost story.
All right.
Because now, I've been burning sage and everything else in the world. We're throwing Bibles at it and everything else, trying to get everything out of that house.
I don't have any ghost stories, so I don't really.
Do you believe in them?
No.
No.
Yeah. Well, they could exist. I mean, maybe I'm just, some people I do believe have a different frequency that they can kind of relate to that at. I know people that swear they can see different things, whatever. Maybe I'm just don't care, or my frequency's not there. It's I'm not on that frequency, so I don't see it, and I don't just leave me alone. I'll go
what
look
about
for
the Bigfoot people? I mean, there's certain people that have more than one encounter, or
right,
seem to be, maybe I'm looking at the ridge all the time because I'm an outdoorsman and always hunted my whole life, and maybe someone else is they're not looking at that particular place. They're always looking where the animals wouldn't be, and that's where you would see a Bigfoot. I remember, I'm trying to think of that primatologist, Anna Nakara, lives in England, and she's on a lot of the Bigfoot shows and Legend of Me Science and whatnot. And so she was talking about game cameras, and they were after trying to get a game camera of a known species, and I don't recall what it was in Africa or South America.
It was a lion, or it was a tiger of some sort, wasn't it?
I can't remember now. And they had set the cameras every 50 feet was a camera, even if it was right behind a tree. And they had 50 cameras. And how long was it? Over a year or 2 years maybe. And they still didn't have one picture of this animal that they knew. And so she was talking to Cliff Barrickman, and Cliff had asked me, and him and I were talking about it, where do you put game cameras at? Well, you put them on flats, you put them on ridges, you put them on waterways, you put them on dead animals, you put them on all these different things. And she said, how do you know they travel there? I mean, how do you know that they only travel on north facing hillsides and they're only 1/3 the way up the, hill? You just don't really know for sure exactly where they go. I remember there for a while that I considered what she said, and I blocked a mountainside off along the bottom of it. I probably had 20 cameras on one mountainside, just, every so many feet, so they overlap each other, thinking that, trying to think outside the box, that maybe the animals come off the side of the hills, not similar to deer or other animals. Maybe they don't consider things like that, but I didn't get any pictures then either. I know. I mean, what do you do?
Anyway, so
go Go ahead.
I was going to say, Les, you go out, you do a lot of talks, right? You go out and do talks at conferences and things like that.
I just do a few. I don't. I mean,
Okay.
just not a bunch. No, I've got
Okay.
like 4 or 5 this year, and mainly
Well,
it's because friends.
that's quite a bit. That's
Well,
quite a
mainly
bit.
because friends ask me. I mean, the people
Okay.
that are asking me are friends, and and I
So-
steer away. I steer away from some of them. I just don't, because it takes way too much time from doing other things. It takes too much time from family.
Sure.
I can understand where Russ comes from. Doesn't do it anymore.
Right.
I even told my wife last year. I was like, I don't think I want to do any this year. And I even told other people that I was going to step away from the whole uh, public part of the field, because that's just not,
Sure.
because in all reality, I'm an introvert. I'm not a big people person.
Right.
I like being out by myself, but I also like to, when friends ask me to, hey, do you mind doing
Sure. You
this?
like to help them out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
when you go to those talks, I mean, what do you generally like to cover? Do you talk about your book? Do you talk about some, pretty good encounters you've had or reports? Like I said, we went over the one report,
Yeah.
maybe some other reports you talk about. Cause like I said, whenever I just I'm not like Russ and have done like 200 podcasts. I did a podcast for somebody a couple weeks ago.
Shoot,
Yeah.
we've done almost 80, you and I.
Well, I know. I don't do it for anybody else. I've done, I think, maybe 2, not for us. And the people know me, so they're like, "Hey, tell us this story," or "Tell us this story," because I like to tell stories. I like to talk. I like to hear myself sometimes. So at least that's what my wife says. So anyway,
you have some good stories.
Yeah,
Usually I start out with, because people ask me how I got into it, so I usually tell them the story how I got into everything. Then I go into like what is here in West Virginia. Could it support Bigfoot? Like as far as food sources, water sources. I'll give I'll give some information on how many water sources are in West Virginia as far as like named. Like 126 rivers and streams. There's this and that. There's only one. Several lakes. They're all lakes in West Virginia except for one, the Trout Pond in Hardy County, is the only body of water in West Virginia is not man-made. Then I'll go into possible food sources. Not just deer, but there's other animals. There's and there's fish that could be whether it's and there's wild edibles that they could eat, and whether in other like possible as far as like insects, grubs, just like
Sure.
this thing could be a foraging animal and an omnivore and eat more than what some people think. They only eat deer and stuff like that. And then I'll go into some accounts and some stories and things.
Okay. All right. Like I said, people like stories. You got any other good stories you want to tell us?
Let me think. One of the other ones that I really find that to me is really cool and kind of chilling is in I think it was 1972. A gentleman just come back from Vietnam. He was staying with his mother. His dad had passed away years ago. So he's staying with his mother. He had an aunt, or not an aunt. Sorry, he had a sister that was several years older than him. And she had already had some kids and had her marriage had failed. So that she had the kids with her. And so he had several nieces and nephews, like 3 or 4 of them or something like that. And well, they lived up in this holler way up in Harrison County, in a little community called Margaret, just a small woods community. And they would go, his mom and sister would go once a month. They'd go out and buy supplies, and because the nearest town was Shinston.
Wow.
So they go buy supplies once a month, and they bring back, and that's how they lived until the next month. Well, he was at the house. It was a little farmhouse. He actually took me and showed me where the farmhouse used to be. And well, they asked him to sit with the kids, and he agreed. Then his mother and sister went to town, and for some reason, the water was shut off in the house, and it had a well, but there was a pump. There was a smoke shed outside, and root cellar, and then on the one end of the house, there was underneath the house is where the pump was for the well. Well, the water shut off, and he had no idea why, but he told his nephew. His one nephew was like, I think he said 12 years old or something like that, and he said, "Hey, I need you to go see why the see if the pump's running, or see if what happened in, because it just shut off." And his nephew's like, "No, I don't want. I don't want to go down. I don't want to go over and down in the cellar by myself." He said, "I can't leave the other kids in the house because they were a lot younger." He said, "I'll stand at the back door." He said, "I'll watch you. You know, you'll be all right." Well, the way he described it to me, it was an old farmhouse that had kind of like a small L shaped on the back, you know, in the backyard off to the, and the L shape was to the left. And his nephew started across the yard, and there was the stairs that ran adjacent to the house, the basement, went into the cellar. There's no handrail or anything like that on, he told me. And his nephew started to turn to go down the steps. And that's when he not the nephew, but this gentleman sees this arm come from around the corner of the house. He said it was reddish orange, reddish brown color, and had hair that hung probably about 3 to 4 inches below, you know, the forearm. Mm-hmm. And he sees this hand and arm come around the house, and he goes to almost, I guess, grab his nephew by the top of the head. He said his hand's massive. And he said it looked like he was going to grab his nephew by the top of the head. And that's when he yells at his nephew, and his nephew kind of turns and sees the arm and hand. And he then rolls across the ground, takes off running, runs over to his uncle and runs into the house and goes in. And as he did that, the arm pulled back. Well, the uncle, once the nephew got to the house, he grabbed a gun, I guess, out of the house, ran across to the corner to where you're seeing his arm, and there's nothing there. And behind where this was, you know, the house, or behind that corner of the house was a big field. Well, I don't know if you would mean, I mean, huge field, but it was a bigger field. And he said by the time he got there, there was nothing. He didn't see anything running off. He didn't see anything going around the house. And he said, and he didn't see anything entering the wood line, but whatever it was that went to grab his nephew was gone within, 30 seconds or so, I guess. And I asked him, I said, "What do you think it was?" And he said, "I have no idea." He never heard of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or anything like that. And he had never seen the Patterson-Gimlin film or anything. And I showed him pictures of, you'll find, some drawings and whatnot of these creatures with the hair hanging. And he said, "I didn't see it all." He said, "But that's the arms that I was showing from some of these pictures." He said, "That's what I saw." So.
Wow. So you said you never actually seen a Bigfoot, but you thought maybe you've seen a Bigfoot possibly?
Yeah. I can't definitively say I have. I still question what I saw last summer was one or not. I was traveling Route 33 going toward Elkins for work, and I just come up to the top of the hump. Russ, you might know where I'm talking about. As you cross the Randolph County line, start in toward Elkins, there's a hump, and you can look down and see the Taggart River.
Yeah.
And it runs right up into Elkins. And it's, I don't know, it's like a couple miles from that light that turns to go into Elkins.
Yeah.
Well, when I topped that hump, I looked down, and I always look up the stream. I like to look up the river because the river's really nice looking. There's rocks. And when I look down, I see this figure. That's all I can say, figure on a rock. And it's big, and it's black collar, but I only seen it for like maybe a second, second and a half, and I'm like thinking to myself, did I just see what I think I saw, or did I see a fisherman, or did I see a bear? But when I went back, I went back and up the road and turned around and come back. And I could see the rock. There was nothing on it. Well, at first I thought, well, maybe I was mistaken. Maybe I seen an old log get washed up and was standing there by that rock. There was nothing there. There was nothing on the rock. There was nothing standing. There was nothing leaning against it. there, I couldn't see any fishermen, but in my mind, what I seen was big. From the distance I seen it, which after I went back and done the kind of the investigation of it, is nearly half a mile. I know that seems like a lot, but when you're actually standing at that, where I was at, from that vantage point to that rock, it doesn't seem that far.
Right.
But what I seen was big enough to it made me pay attention, or, it made me, like, wow, what did I see?
Sure.
And I've been back a couple times. I went back this past winter, look to see if I can find any other evidence, any tracks or anything like that. But the last time I was there, I actually got contacted by somebody in the area. I was actually walking the trail to get out to the rock, and this guy calls me because his mother had told him that I was in the area, and he calls me and said, "Hey, I just want to tell you about a sighting I had." And I was like, "Yeah, tell me about it." And he told me about it. He said it was in November last year. It was during deer season, and there's these big windmills. He was sitting down from one of the windmills in a tree stand, and he kept hearing this noise and rustling in the bushes and stuff like that. And then he thought he heard what he told me just sounded like chatter, like somebody talking, but he couldn't understand he couldn't make out what was being said. And then he heard this snapping noise, and he said, "I knew what it was right away." He said, "I've heard it before." He said, "I knew right away that was a bear snapping its jaws, clacking its jaws." So within a few seconds, this bear walks out on the right of way, just out from his tree stand. And he said it looked like it was extremely nervous. It was looking around and this and that. And he said, "Well, maybe it's got my scent. It's just knowing I was there." So after the bear wandered off, he said, "Well, the bear's got my scent. I'm not going to see any deer. They've already, got me." So he gets out of the tree stand. He starts walking down the right of way toward his dad. And that's when he sees along the side of the right of way. He said that's, to him looked like the oddest tree stump he's ever seen, about 75 yards away. And then he realizes it's not a tree stump. This thing's moving. And he thinks it's a bear. But then it turns toward him because it must have heard him or smelled, got his smell. And this thing wasn't huge. He said, "I believe it had to be a juvenile or something." He said it's only like 4.5 feet tall. He said maybe at the shoulders, like 2 feet wide. He said it was all black, is covered in hair. He said, but the weird part about it, the chest area, like from the pec muscles down toward the groin area, was lighter color, like a lighter brownish color. And he said it was almost in like a V type pattern going down. So I don't know if that was actually lighter hair, or maybe he was actually seeing skin color. But when he went to get his phone out to try to take a picture of this thing, it took off running and was gone. And he didn't see anything else after that.
And how close was that to where maybe you had your sighting?
Less than 3 miles.
Okay. So nothing for a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Pretty
Hey, Les, let me ask you, because you started in the paranormal aspect of Bigfoot, and do you believe in the woo aspect, the paranormal aspect of Bigfoot, or how are you feeling about that?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not afraid to take a report and listen to it. Whether I believe that everything that I take as far as the paranormal side is Bigfoot, I can't say that. In my heart, and in the easiest thing for me, or the explanation for me, is that what we're seeing is an animal because it leaves evidence.
Sure.
But there's some things out there that I hear people talk about that's weird and strange, and I'm not afraid to listen to it. Whether it's Bigfoot, I don't know, or whether it's something completely different, but I will listen to reports, and I'll put them reports aside, and then eventually maybe something will make a connection. But to me, if I don't do it, if I don't listen to the folks, I'm kind of doing injustice to me, I guess. But I also believe that maybe what these folks are seeing, maybe something different. And the reason they call it Bigfoot is because Bigfoot has become so ingrained in pulp culture now, in everybody's vocabulary, that's what they're associating. That's their frame of reference. So they maybe call something else strange. That's the only way they can explain it is Bigfoot.
Right.
Sure.
Hey,
So
who's to say?
I don't know for sure what they're saying is a Bigfoot. So
Okay. All right. We're getting down to the end here. This is the time that you can
Preach.
sell your wares. So you have a book out. So I'm sure they can find it on Amazon. I Googled it. I Googled Leslie Called Bigfoot, and it came up was the first thing was your book on Amazon. You said you're doing 4 or 5 speaking engagements this year.
but I should have had the list wrote down, but I don't.
That's all right. What's going to be your favorite one?
Oh, it's definitely going to be the West Virginia Bigfoot Festival. Not because it's the festival itself, but it's it's my home field. I enjoy hearing the people. People coming.
When and where is that?
It is June 27, 28, 29. It is near Sutton, West Virginia. This year, it's actually going to be held at Holly Gray Park. Okay. Instead of downtown, it has outgrown the actual town.
Oh, wow.
So
you'd think Russ would be there, but I mean,
listen, I feel bad about it because Dave that's running it always reaches out to me and asks me to come, and he did again a couple times. He asked last year. You knew this, Brad, and I just said, hey man, I admire what you're doing. I want to support it. I appreciate it. I just I hear Leslie's doing 4 or 5 weekends, and I'm thinking, man, I'd rather be in those woods those 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
So I need to do it at some point, but I have not done it.
Yeah, I asked Russ.
One of these days, I will drive down, pick you up on the way, and we will go. I don't know where it's at.
I asked Russ the first year when I was in charge of the speakers, and he politely said, I like to be in the woods more. So
yeah. Like I said, maybe that's why I told Dave, I'm like, keep asking, because there'll be a time that maybe I'll feel like, I want to speak again, but you want to get out there so you have some stories of your own to tell that, and I always say that I'm feeling the pressure of my age, since my birthday's tomorrow, but how many years do I have left that I could, hopefully a lot, that I could be out there and push in the woods. And, but I want to find, I want to prove something. I want to get some evidence.
All right.
Well, actually this year, I'm not even speaking there this year. I'm more the, MC, I guess. Yeah, I guess you'd say.
The host with the most.
I'll introduce folks and whatnot. But I just enjoy talking to people. Sitting there and people come, hey, you want to hear this? You want to hear that? Yeah, that's what I enjoy the most from it.
Well, if I'm not doing anything that weekend, maybe I'll do a day trip and just go up and shake a few hands and say hi. All right. Because I know I'd like to meet you for sure, man.
No, he won't. He won't do it.
You don't know that.
I can barely get him out, and
that's not
when
true.
It's a expedition 20 minutes from his house, he won't even come. So
no, that's not true. You see me for sure. I'll be in Ohio. Let's see, I'm in North Carolina next month for a documentary. I'm in May. I'm in Ohio for the Bigfoot conference. So there.
Right. So we have to pay him. We have to pay him stag wages to get him out.
Hey, Les, thank you for your time, man. It was good to meet you. And, we're going to have people reach out to you and take a look at your book. I'm sure there's some good stories in it.
I appreciate it. Thank you all. It was nice meeting. Yeah, Russ, one day we'll run into each other. I'll be down your way here probably sometime.
You let me know. Reach out when you do.
All righty.
All right. See later. All right.
See ya.
Thanks, Les. Bye.
That's nice.
All right.
Glad you chose that so that you could chew on my rear end a little bit there.
Well,
Jeez.
Somebody has to.
Yeah. Apparently, clearly.
The Cinderella life going on. So
Cinderella. That's right.
Anyway.
All right. How about
subscribe?
Subscribe. Push the button up there.
West Virginia Bigfoot.
West Virginia Bigfoot on Facebook, thebigfootdoc.com. Reach out if you have a guest. I know some people have reached out. My friend Ontario Richardson in Iowa had reached out, and she gave me a couple of people, and she's like, hey, I want to hear these people on the show. So if you have somebody that you want to hear from, you want us to talk to, let Brad or I know.
Yep. wideopenresearch@gmail.com, Wide Open Research on Insta. You can hit us up that way. Russ and I both kind of monitor that account. So easy way to get a hold of us.
All right. Well, it's good to see you, my friend. And
yeah,
thanks, everybody.
We're done.